you have about a 10-foot fall from the south side to the north side. That just so happens to be the front of the building, the face of the building. So that's where the elevation was established to provide for 45 foot of height at that point. We're about 40 feet on the south side and close to 50 feet on the north side.
So it's averaged.
So it's averaged. It's averaged.
Okay.
What Scott and I determined as we parsed through the language, every bit of it, is that there's a little discrepancy or a little bit of ambiguity in that in regards to the definition for building height. It says that the finished lot grade along the sides. Well, that almost sounds as if the assumption is made that the grade is either falling off or going uphill from the street, and that's not always the case. So what we have done in the past is just, as I gave you the example of Delafield Square, we've used that wherever we have the greatest amount of grade that changes across the face of the building. That's the side we use to determine the building height. As we've done in the past, until you tell us to do something different, that's the way we'll interpret it in the future as well.
So it could be on the side.
It could be on the side if that's where the elevation is where we have a change in grade. One of the items here is in regards to CBD 1 building height. In regards to the overall height, the city has routinely offered 45 foot as building height for flat roofed buildings. We don't have any specific language that tells us it's different than that.
Well,
there is the opportunity to, depending on how you interpret it, that 35 feet should be the maximum height, and anything beyond that would be an require additional setback. Unfortunately, that over the past 30 years, 45 feet was granted as the standard maximum height for flat roofed buildings. The only building that this has really applied to since 2000 has been Delafield Square.
We all know which building that is, right?
Yeah.
One across the street with the fourth story.
Yeah, it has fourth story. It also has a cupola on top, which is an architectural feature that's not calculated in the height. As a transition or as a segue to the next issue is the setbacks. Well, for Delafield Square, they had additional height. They requested the additional height in conformance with the ordinance provided additional horizontal distance to their setback. And they conformed to that horizontal distance of minimally 2 feet for every 1 foot vertical distance. They confirmed to that on 3 of the 4 sides. The 4th side that they were not able to conform that is the west elevation. However, the Planning Commission allowed them a waiver in that regard because at the time they were all those buildings on that entire lot or on the entire block were under one ownership, and they had and they still do have a joint parking agreement for the parking spaces on the west side of the village or the Delafield Square.
but they are separate tax parcels.
They are separate tax
Well,
parcels.
that's a little sticky there.
It's a little sticky, but I think in hindsight, the applicant could have come in with a CSM to combine all the lots
Sure.
and do it as,
Yeah, I
as a
understand
PUD.
that, yeah.
So that was a little sidestepping, but I think the end result is something that everyone is pretty well happy with. I also identified for you the list of comparisons to Delafield Square and how these numbers were utilized at that time.
So those numbers demonstrate where we've made exceptions to the existing code, right?
Right.
So I don't really like the word precedent, but there's a realistic argument that any applicant could make that this is the math we used, this is the exceptions that we've made before to the code. Doesn't mean we have to do it again, but if this would be the math we'd want to use in the future to say, if we're going to follow what we've done in the past, this is as big as you can go.
Yeah.
Right?
I get that. On your example here, Roger, is there a math error? Maybe I'm not seeing it right. You have north elevation at 43 feet, but the east at 49. Isn't it much higher on that north side?
This is information taken right off the documentation that we have.
You know how how the lot slopes and,
It slopes.
There's a little bit of discrepancy here in that when action was taken to approve the conditional use, we were working from conceptual architecture. And the numbers I gave you here is what's in the conditional use. When it got around to the actual architectural construction documentation, the numbers changed a little bit. Whether it was the grade that wasn't figured out, I don't think the building changed. I think the actual
'Cause that's-
grade, the engineering of
Grade
it.
did.
We've
turned
seen
out
that
different.
game many times in the past where
I
somebody
know,
tells
that's
us
why
it's
I'm
gonna be
bringing
this
this
big,
up.
then they bring
Yeah.
in all this fill and raise it up 10 feet, right? And that's where they start their
played
building.
these schemes in
Right,
the
so you
past.
just,
McCormick did it.
you
Village
gotta
Square, and
understand what the building grade
That's why I'm
is.
asking these questions, because I know on that north side, that's gonna be the highest part of the building, from ground up.
Is it possible, just for the integrity of this document, to update it, say have someone drop a ball of yarn off the top of the roof, or have someone shoot a laser up and measure how tall it
Instruments
is?
that'll do that. Yeah, you don't need the ball of yarn, but
I know,
I
so
like
can
that.
someone, do we have, does our city engineer have something we can pull a measurement with a laser?
I'm sure they
Shoot the
can.
top, I'd just be interested to know, because 49 seems light. I mean, what does it say, north, 43?
the 43 doesn't seem
doesn't-
right
that
on
doesn't
that
seem
north
right.
side. It's gotta be. If the south side's 35,
East, 49.
I
No,
gotta think
it's-
that north is,
The north side is probably the same as the front, 49.
well, that
got-
continues to
You
drop
put
off
dirt
as you
all
go
over
Yeah,
down.
I'm thinking
it.
taller.
once you
That
hit
would
the-
be different.
Anyway,
Yeah, because you have a drive-in garage on that
Right,
north
but you got,
side.
you
so-
know what I'm saying, you're high here, you got 49 feet there, it'll be 49 feet or
Depends on where
give
you
or
measure
take,
from.
running along the north.
So does this help you understand what the code says and how we've compared it in the
Right.
past? 'Cause that was our goal here. It's
I know.
it's an education process so that we hopefully are all on the same page and all thinking the same way when we look at these parts of the ordinance.
And how does this play into, with our past petition, which I think is precipitating all this?
Yeah.
The number of floors, because they actually knocked the floor off and the building came back even higher.
Yeah, so
So-
this is an education process about our code, right, and what we've done in the past. Don't really want to
understand
talk
that.
about another applicant,
What I'm
right?
saying, though,
We're
is-
talking about the code and how we interpret it.
If they meet the building height, like we show here, doesn't matter if it's 3 or 4 floors. It doesn't seem to be it mattered with Delafield Square. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so on
Because we said
Delafield
3
Square,
floors.
if you look at, what's the height of the south elevation? I don't have that in front of me.
35.
35, right? So that conforms to the code and it's 3 stories, right? As it transitions and you get further into the building,
I get that.
it allows the 4th, which starts to work the math from a different angle, a different setback.
Okay.
Right?
So we are, even though code is 3 floors, we will go
There's
to
an
4
exception to 4
with playing the angles.
with following the angles.
I just want to clarify.
Yep.
I get it.
And I want to share a conversation that Laura and I had recently, and that is, when it comes to the floors, you're talking more of an aesthetic issue, which perhaps that language should not be in 1739, in the
Yeah.
zoning
Ordinance.
bulk regulations. That perhaps should be in the downtown Delafield design guidelines, which is the part of the section of the code that deals with aesthetics. Because as long as an architect and his structural engineer can design a building that conforms to our bulk regulations, why should it matter if there's 3 or 4 floors?
That's just what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I agree
But
with you.
we have the code and we have what we've done in the past, right?
I know, but
If
we're
we want to
opening
make
a
code
discussion
changes,
here,
we
are
can do
not?
that, right? There's a process for
Isn't
that.
that what we're here, opening up the discussion, or is it not?
Well, all I'm pointing out is that if we want to change the code, there's an avenue to doing
got
that.
it. Sure.
For me, I know the story behind Delafield Square. The mayor at the time, when it was approved, said, I think this is going to come back to bite us. And here we are. I know how the hotel got to be where the size it is.
Yeah.
But those were things that, for me, those are things that happened in the past. this is a different administration. So we can abide by those parameters set for the downtown that maybe weren't as tightly held in the past. So that's kind of where I am.
I think, well, I know that this clarification is based on how has the code been applied to buildings in downtown in the past? And I mean, I really wanted to be clear on how that has been done. How we want to do it moving forward, whether we want to change code or whether we'd want to change the rules of how we apply it. I guess there's options there, but this was, I think, I wrestled with a couple different things that seemed to conflict, and I kept bringing questions to Roger, and he said, let's just apply the most obvious example with Delafield Square and just get an understanding of how the code's been applied. And so this really helped me, I mean, especially the visual at the end. So I appreciate it, Roger. That's
Well, thanks for your
changing
guidance.
Yeah, changing chapter 17 into 2 pages of text that we can understand. You can do that every week. That's great.
Yeah,
You might want to print this out and bring this back.
I rather appreciate it because it helps. I appreciate that you did it, Roger, because I think it helps citizens better understand.
Sure.
Sounds good. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, are we
This?
going to deal with gable roofs? Gable roofs?
Gable roofs? Well, code is 45 feet at the ridge.
So you're penalized.
Well,
The word is, the answer is yes,
Yeah.
you're penalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that
I
we're
wish it was-
penalizing them
yeah.
or if we're just arbitrarily giving access to flat roofs.
But it's 35 feet to the average of the roof system, or 45 feet to the ridge.
Right. And I think
So-
that's, historically, that's how we got to 45 feet for a flat roof, is because the flat roof, that ultimate height is the ridge height. And it's,
others would interpret the code differently, but that's what we've done.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
I wish it was as simple as the
What kind-
boathouse code. That's real clear on height, right? Flat roofs no higher than this,
Right.
other roofs no higher than that. That's it.
What can the fire department fight?
60 feet, I believe.
Just from
But,
sitting in on some of the staff meetings, their
Yeah.
big thing is vehicle access.
Yeah, they got to get it close
Hey,
to
well,
the,
they-
Turning radiuses and
the-
vehicle access is
get
Yeah, they.
the proximity of the truck to the building makes a big difference in
And
the
then-
Yeah,
height
just
they
a-
can
just-
service.
Yeah, just a ladder truck, because typically they don't bring that $250,000 truck anywhere near a fire. They only bring hoses.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Building inspector's report, item 8C.
28 permits issued with 1 commercial and 2 residential occupancies.
So generally speaking, year over year, are we doing better than most years or about the same as last year?
As far as permits issued?
Yeah.
We're way down,
We're way down.
yeah, or down.
And that would be compared to,
A steady decline from 3 or 4 years ago
okay, for residential?
for residential.
What was the one commercial?
Occupancy? Nail salon on Heritage Drive.
Good to know. Thank you much. Seeing no further business, the planning commission meeting is adjourned.